We will hear, here we go. Okay, hang on a second. I'm sorry. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our UNA New York Summer Scholars Debriefing, where we will hear the experiences of our scholars we sent abroad who traveled far and wide, interning with the UN offices around the world this summer. I'm Ann Nickel with the United Nations Association of New York. And our Summer Scholars is a significant one for program for UNA New York. This year, it marks the 9th year that we have been able to send our scholars, the brightest and the best from New York City graduate schools abroad. And so far, we have sent 34 scholars and completely supported them when they were abroad. This year, we have sent six wonderful scholars. They are Nozipo Lopi. Is that how you say it? Sort of.
It's okay.
Sort of. I'm butchering your name. I'm so sorry. From South Africa. She's studying at Fordham University. Sujan Kapun is from Nepal. He is also at Fordham. Mafatsi and Delebe from South Africa. Also at Fordham, Lalash Segua from South Africa, and another student from Fordham, and two students from Columbia University, Meenakshi Viswanathan, she's from India, and also Idai Kadirova from Kyrgyzstan, again, both from Columbia University. And we're lucky to have once again Robin van Puyambuk, our Executive Vice President, to lead the conversation and moderate what will certainly be a very interesting discussion. And I'm so looking forward to finding out all about what you've done after I let you go in May and June. So it'll be a very interesting discussion. And once we're finished, I'm sure that Robin will be happy to take some questions from you. So I'll hand it over to Robin. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Anne, for this introduction. And so this is always, I think, the most enjoyable and exciting webinar program that we do with our summer scholars, especially when you come back to learn from your experiences and sort of to see how it is to then work within one of the UN agencies. So what we will do is I'll ask each of you to briefly introduce yourself, sort of your background, and also say a few words about the agency that you worked at. Then we'll have some conversation. We have a bit of a back and forth, and then I definitely want to leave it open towards the end for questions from the audience. So in no particular...
Robin, can I interrupt
yes.
for a second? I'm sorry, because we haven't done this in a while. Bennett, could you remove Robin's... there we go. Okay, that's what I...
There we go. All right, good. So in no particular order, but Nozipo, you are right up there, first one to go. So tell us a bit about yourself and where did you go on adventure?
Okay, afternoon, everyone. My name is Nozipo Lope. I am from South Africa, and as mentioned, I am currently enrolled for my master's degree in economics at Fordham University. Recently completed my master's degree in international political economy and development, focusing on international banking and finance. I previously have a finance background, working for one of the leading banks in South Africa. As a strategy analyst. So I was assigned to the Kingdom of Eswatini. As you can see, I come representing. Well, I was fortunate enough to spend a couple of months down there with the UNDP development program in the Kingdom. I got to do a couple of work with them, which I will further talk about. I'm truly grateful to be part of this panel and looking forward to hearing what my peers also got up to in the summer. Thank you. That's
great. And we very much appreciate the national dress that you're wearing. It's beautiful. And maybe for the audience, where is Eswatini, the Kingdom of Eswatini? Because I'm not sure everybody knows geographically where that is located.
Okay, so the Kingdom of Eswatini is in the south of Africa, located within South Africa, on the border of Mozambique as well. So it is between Mozambique and South Africa. They have a population of 1.1 million. people in their country. They're known as a monarch country led by King Mswati III. And yeah, people who really take pride in their culture. And a fun fact is actually that I am born in South Africa. However, I am Swazi and had never been to Swaziland. So this was a full circle moment.
It was a homecoming for you.
Definitely was.
Oh, good. So, say maybe a few words. Where exactly then did you do the internship, and what was the scope of work?
Okay, so I was based in Mbabane at the UN House. That's where the UNDP office is situated. The scope of work that I did is I worked alongside the communication specialist as a communication strategist, employing my previous experience. However, I had no experience, none whatsoever background in communication, just strategies around developing and implementing full communication packages from videography, photography, disseminating information and creating content for the UNDP official website. Also disseminating information to the national newspapers, working in collaboration with government institutions, the government of Eswatini itself. Just to mention a few projects that I worked and was fortunate enough to cover was a national multi-sector conversation, which is a partnership between UNDP Global and PEFA Global. This is basically a scaled initiative to align with key populations' efforts in order to have remove barriers to access services for key populations and services for HIV in particular. One of the other pertinent projects I feel I worked on was the Youth Empowerment Program, which aims to address the significant problem that the country presently has, which is a 58% rate of youth unemployment. So they partnered with the government of Eswatini to help create this program that gives them vocational skills graduates, that is, and trains them. I beg your pardon?
Lalash, please mute yourself. You're coming in here. Continue.
Yes, so in essence, this is an initiative to address the unemployment in Eswatini. The youth is disseminated into public and private sector to ensure that they have a 6 months internship. And in that time, they're able to gain real world experience for the workforce. Should they be retained in these sectors, or should they go further to seek alternative employment options? So in a nutshell, well,
in a nutshell, quite the project. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. So John, you're next. Over to you.
Hi, Robin. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. So I was in Mongolia this summer. Mongolia is a landlocked country, sandwiched between Russia in the north and China in the south, east, and west. So it's the 16th largest country in the world, but it is the second least densely populated country with around 3.4 million population. So I was there working with the country office on the NSDR, or National Human Development Report. And for this year, the topic was just energy transition. So even though Mongolia is a big country and the population is small, and most of the population is situated, like they live in Ulaanbaatar, which is the capital city of Mongolia. And the capital city was originally designed for around 500,000 people, but around half of the population live there. And so the main problem is like it is the coldest capital in the world. So, and the main source of heating electricity is coal, and that produces a lot of emissions. And like especially during the winter, like it gets worse. Because like the Ulaanbaatar is a valley situated in Tul Valley, right? And because of that, all of the emissions they get like deposited like in the air, and because of that, there's like a big health risk during the winter. And because of that, Ulaanbaatar also is like, I think like it's the it gets around like top 10 worst polluted cities in the world during the winter. And because of that, so there's a need to transition to clean energy. And so this is where NSDR report comes in. Mongolia has like a big potential in clean energy. So approximately it was like 2.1 times. It can like produce 2.1 times the demand of Northeast Asia. So it has a huge potential. So in order to harness that, so what can be done, so basically that is the focus of NHDR, and as well as how does that impact health, education, income, those are the 3 indicators of human development indicators. So basically NHDR report is all about that. And I was working on that. On top of that, I was also working for monitoring and evaluation team. So we are working on a EU funded project. So the main idea of the project was to implement RBB, or result-based budgeting system in the government, and in order to improve employment sector. So yeah, so those are the 2 main things that I worked during the summer, and maybe I can talk in more in depth later on.
Yes, and we will, absolutely. Thank you for that. So Meenakshi, you're next on the screen here. Over to you.
Hi, thank you, Robin, and thanks, Anne, for having me here. So my name is Meenakshi. I'm from India, and like Anne mentioned, I'm doing my master's in public administration development practice from Columbia University. And this summer, I was with the UNDP in the Philippines. So I was working for a particular team called Accelerator Labs that is embedded within the UNDP. So Accelerator Labs are embedded within UNDP in around 91 locations, spanning 115 countries. So the team, essentially what it does is it focuses on grassroots level innovations and solutions to sustainable development challenges. So I was working with the Accelerator Lab team in the Philippines, and I was based out of Mandaluyong, which is one of the 16 cities that make up the Metro Manila region in the Philippines. So it's not Manila, but it's Mandaluyong, which is a city very close by to Manila. And it's one of the most populous urban areas in the world, very densely populated. And I had the opportunity of working in Mandaluyong, which is also home to several other development organizations like the Asian Development Bank and international nonprofit organizations as well. So my work this summer was mostly involving data analysis and data visualization. So I worked for the UNDP to come up with data visualizations, which would help them strategize their projects and their like future path in one particular region of the Philippines called BAM, which is it's actually an acronym, stands for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. It is a conflict-prone region, and it's just recently coming out of conflict. So they have a lot of development projects in that region. So I was working for the UNDP using data to sort of help them prioritize projects and design a strategy for the future.
Well, great. Thank you for sharing that. So Idai, over to you.
Hello, thank you for having me. Good afternoon, all. My name is Idai Kadyrova. I'm originally from Kyrgyzstan, Central Asia, and this summer I was one of the 6 fellows participated in this UNA-NYC summer fellowship program, and I joined within this fellowship UNDP office at Laos office in Vientiane, the capital city. So I worked specifically for inclusive growth department with UNDP in Laos, and overall, UNDP provides technical support and policy advice to the government of Laos, and in order to strengthen national capacities, on planning, financing, and implementation of strategies. And Laos is a socialist country, and it operates based on 5-year plans, and I predominantly worked on some policy papers that were aimed at for the next cycle of planning. So to give some advice and technical support to the government regarding different matters. For instance, I worked on 3 policy papers during this summer. I was a diversification paper because Laos, which is the only landlocked country on Indochina peninsula, and it is one of the ASEAN countries. So it recently like in 2021, the railway station was launched to connect the country, and this diversification paper was mainly aimed at looking at the impact of this railway station to diversify the economy, because previously Laos experienced significant GDP growth, but it was not inclusive, and it didn't lead to significant decrease in unemployment. So in order to make it to leverage this railway, and so it was the diversification paper to look at the development prospects of the country. And currently Laos, it is classified as least developed country, but it is planning to transition and to graduate from least developed countries to middle income countries. And therefore, we did a lot of assessments and policy papers regarding this transition from least developed countries, because they have to comply with certain requirements to finalize this process. And so yeah, and that was mostly I assisted in drafting these policy papers. I was very lucky to attend the meetings with government officials in Laos, particularly with Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So where we discussed this midterm reviews of the current plan, and some comments, some recommendations, policy recommendations for the next planning cycle. So thank you, and yeah, I will be happy to answer your questions if you have any.
Yes, I most certainly do. But first, let's go. Thank you, Aidai. Lalash, you're on next.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me clearly. I would like to start off and just apologize for the earlier disruption. It seems I sent the wrong link to my family and they all joined as panelists. So, sorry about that. Yes, my name is Lalash Sahoa. I am currently studying at Fordham University. I am enrolled in my master's in international political economy and development. And prior to that, I completed my master's in economics at Fordham as well. I joined the UNDP co-office in Suriname. Suriname is a very small country in population in the northern eastern part of South America, in between French Guyana, and just above Brazil. And I joined the Social Development and SDG Integration Unit at the UNDP co-office. And pretty much what I did over the summer, I was part of a JP program, which stands for Joint Program Initiative, where we looked at finding ways in order to support government and third parties to help vulnerable communities within Suriname, which would be the indigenous and tribal peoples. And so I worked across UN agencies with them, alongside them, to gather enough information to develop a survey that would be later on deployed to these communities in ways that which we can help them and support government to help them to improve livelihoods and overall reduce inequalities, which would be SDG 8. And yeah, pretty much that's the only project I was involved in. It's a pretty dense and intricate project over the summer. And so I had time spent with the villages with the chief leaders and the community members, as well as Ministry of Agriculture and Development. I was alongside international consultants that were onboarded and national consultants. And so I spent a lot of time in meetings, listening and taking in as much knowledge as I could about the country, the history, and how we can help these indigenous and tribal peoples. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Fascinating. Last but not least, Mafatse.
Thanks, Robin. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mafatse Ndlebe, and I am a Global Markets Fellow at Fordham University, also a dual master's candidate in International Political Economy and Development, focusing predominantly on international banking and finance, as well as enrolled for an MA in Economics. I'm originally from Johannesburg, South Africa. And prior to being enrolled as a dual master, I worked in South Africa in a development finance institution as an investment transactor, predominantly funding debt capital for infrastructure projects within the sub-Saharan Africa region. I am passionate about development, predominantly development finance. And over the summer, I was assigned to work with the UNDP office in Indonesia, which is based out of Jakarta. And I specialized in strategic foresight and innovative financing. So essentially what this role entailed is essentially synthesizing and producing knowledge sources and literature as part of the country publication, where essentially it's just incorporating all the great initiatives that the UNDP office, but predominantly the Accelerator Lab, has done in incorporating strategic foresight into initiatives that they have supported the government, both from an exploratory perspective as well as pragmatic, where essentially we've seen how foresight has impacted policy and policy design. So essentially, that's what I specialized in. And I think as we go in, as we continue with the discussion, I can specifically speak on the projects that we worked with, as well as alongside supporting the Indonesian government. But in a nutshell, looking forward to the insightful engagement.
Yes, thank you. So what we'll do next is I have one more serious question, and then we can go to a couple of more fun questions. So I wanted to sort of relate your previous experience, either work-wise or with the research that you've done, with the practical experience during your internship. So Nozipo, sorry, I'll start back with you, and we'll talk a little bit about, you're still muted, we'll talk a bit about energy. So my favorite topic. You did a lot of studies with ESCOM, and I'm on the phone every day with colleagues in Joburg, and the electricity is never on. So that's you do this research, you see what a real life issue is, not just for a community but for an entire country. So then you're in Eswatini working on a consultation with an international agency. It's more about the communications part. So how do you relate having a lot of exposure to doing research on a very, very significant problem in South Africa, and then having to do something that's much more, how would I say that, on the communication side, much more, well, you need different soft skills, where did you feel that has any impact, any relevance, if you then look at the bigger picture, what people are dealing with every day with these outages?
I definitely think my past experiences have honed my skills. However, I do owe it to the people of Eswatini because they were such a soft landing, very welcoming people, and there really was an openness to share and teach. I think what my previous experience has prepared me for is to learn on the job. I remember my first assignment, literally on the second day that I was there, I had to cover a youth in agriculture in Daba, which is a seminar that was organized by the Ministry of Agriculture with numerous youth delegates. They came from all over Eswatini to speak about food security and how do we ensure that we get the youth involved in farming and ensuring that they are part of solving the problems the country presently has. I believe I was given the space to create, but to also learn, and I was trusted with these tasks. In that, I was then able to take what I've learned previously, bringing together strategy and communication, how better to communicate these, particularly to the youth, so that it lands, how do we make sure that they can relate to the information, the people that actually it is being done for and they're able to engage with. So having dealt with those intricate issues in my time of research, whether being with the Council of Science and Industrial Research Institution in South Africa, I was then able to learn from the people of Eswatini because they are so humorous. They have a lot of humility. They're very soft. They're also very soft-spoken. So I had no other choice but to adapt and become one of them and learn their ways of work, that is. I learned very much from the lady that I was working with in particular, who was the communication specialist, like I said, who enabled me the space to also run with my own things and entrusted me to create alongside her.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, interesting. So John, over to you, because we'll stay a little bit in the energy space. So you did work on the material well-being index here, which is sort of its research, right? And then you work on the national sort of human development report in Mongolia, and then you see firsthand, well, this is a beautiful place. It's massive, very not densely populated at all, but then yet it's one of the most polluted cities because they burn coal. So how do you reflect upon doing the theoretical research while you're doing your studies versus then being on the ground and looking at those development reports and then seeing with your own eyes, like what is the impact of, for example, pollution on the local community?
Well, thank you so much for your question. Yeah, that's a very interesting question. My specialization right now, so I'm also studying IPED, which is International Political Economy and Development, and I'm specializing in environmental economics and resource economics. So, yeah, based on that, I mean, yeah, the interesting thing about Mongolia is like, even though it has like so much potential and it is like rich in natural resources, renewable resources, still Mongolia hasn't been able to exploit that. And they're like still the grid, the power grids, they are like old and they have to like really rely on Russia to import electricity. And even they cannot control the voltage. So because of that, only the central region of the capital, they get like proper voltage. And the gate districts are like outskirts of capital. So like they cannot use electrical devices to heat them, like electrical heating devices, even though they want, right? So what they have to do is like they have to burn briquettes, and which cause further pollutions. Wherever they go, they have to travel in cars during the winter because it's too cold to walk outside. And since the city is small and there are more cars on the streets, so like the pollution is just like adding up, right? And because of that, like it's bad. And even though there's like big resources, there have been investment recently. There have been a lot of investment from ADB. So I think there's like the biggest storage system. It's called BASE. So like it is like a system of batteries where like it can power Ulaanbaatar for 6 to 7 hours. So like those type of investments have been going on, especially from ADB, EBRD, those kind of international organizations. So it is interesting to see, like even with the investments, still there are like some policy bottlenecks, which is like stopping from really transitioning to clean energies as well as technology. Even though the cost of green energy has gone down, so like maybe like 10 years ago, it was more expensive to switch to clean energy, but now I think it's like cheaper, or like even like and I guess like it's cheaper than like building a coal power plant, right? So there's a lot of potential, and it looks really like in the future like this like very big potential of Mongolia like transitioning to green energy and becoming a powerhouse on that. Yes, so what I studied in environmental economics, I could like utilize those knowledge because like NSDI report also has something called we are including CG modeling and all. So like I could like read those reports and provide feedbacks to other third-party organizations that are working with NSDR as well. So I worked with FFI, which is Fordham Prices Index. It is a index created by Fordham University, and I utilize that knowledge in creating SDI reports, and as well as creating constructing SDI indicators. So like that, I could implement my knowledge from my class. Yeah. So. Okay. And also like and also as I was working with monitoring and evaluation team, so I had taken monitoring and evaluation project subject in my winter course. So like I could also implement that while helping the monitoring and evaluation team. So like that, I could like implement a lot of in-class knowledge, and yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'm glad you were able to transplant your theoretical knowledge into a more practical agenda. So, I mean, actually, I'll have the same sort of question for you, because you were more focused on sort of the urban sustainability work, but then all of a sudden you move to a more country type of agenda. So work on urban infrastructure sustainability is in a way very tangible and practical. Anything to do at the country level always becomes morphs into more generalizations. So how did you transition from the urban focus to the more country level?
Yeah, thanks, Robin, for the question. Yeah, it was definitely challenging at first because this is a country that I have not lived in or not worked in. So just understanding the context of the Philippines was a challenge that I had to overcome. So I spent a lot of my time just reading up on the Philippines, the sort of like development challenges that the country faces, and understanding this region in particular that I was working with, the BAM, and understanding its history, because a lot of this background knowledge really impacted the way that I went about the actual task that I had to do and the output that was expected out of me. So I spent a lot of time just developing that context. And I must say, so I worked for a little bit of my internship remotely, and then I went in person to Manila. And working in person definitely helped me get that context a lot better. Just being able to live in that country and speak with the people and speak with my colleagues helped me get that context. And that was sort of like how I navigated being able to work in this context and for this task in particular. Going from studying urban sustainability and those sort of issues at Columbia to working at a more country level, definitely meant that I had to rethink some of like design choices that I would make. Like, since I was mostly working with data visualization, definitely informed the sort of design choices I would make. And I had to have several conversations with my supervisors and with the country office head to discuss the sort of output that would be most useful for them. And then I applied all the skills that I had learned at Columbia and my career before, and applied it to sort of designing a map or a dashboard that would be most useful for them, for their understanding, and for their purposes in explaining these projects to external stakeholders. So I think like just having that really rich context, and also being given the freedom to sort of learn on the job, to make mistakes, to experiment, to ask for feedback, and then go back again, was a very iterative process. And I think that process helped me in delivering the sort of output that was expected of me.
Yeah. Okay, good, great. Thank you for sharing that. Idai, my fellow finance person, my question for you is, you did work in audit and finance and worked in commercial banks, right, in Uzbekistan. And so, that's a very diligent type of work to do. And then all of a sudden you're at the government level in Laos looking at 5-year planned economies. Like, how do you make that transition from a more private sector environment where you really do nuts and bolts as a finance, as an auditor, and then go into this massive planning type of environment?
Thank you, Robin, for the question. So I did my undergrad in economics in Kyrgyzstan. So I think my first acquaintance with like this macro level, it started like from my undergrad, and then like even working in audit, we had some interactions with like state-owned companies. So there was some interaction still, and then I joined a public administration program. So I'm currently pursuing my master's in public administration and development practice here at Columbia. So I think a lot of work that I did in Laos was mostly connected to the courses or to the program that I study now. So because like I had to look at, for instance, like food systems in Laos, like how to develop this food industry, how to like the agricultural sector mostly, because like 70% of labor force is mostly like in agriculture sector. So for instance, in diversification paper, we had to look like predominantly on agriculture. So, and I took some courses here at Columbia. So I think in these terms, it was very practical to apply those knowledge gained at school on the ground and CIVIC on ground. I believe it was definitely a very different experience in terms of because like all my prior experience was in private sector, and as you mentioned, like I worked in audit in Central Asia, and in terms of like culture, in terms of region, and the company, everything was different. So it took me some time to like to learn and to adapt. And I think my courseworks here, the communication with my colleagues, a lot of research on the country, on the like regulations in Laos helped me a lot to somehow like adapt and like to the new conditions. And I actually asked a lot of questions like from my colleagues, and I like said that I didn't have any experience in like working for multilaterals or like for the state. So they were very friendly and welcoming. So I really like appreciated their help, and it was, I think, one of the major parts like of this entire internship, like and of the learning process.
Thank you. So Lalash, back over to you. Let's focus on SDG 8 that you just mentioned, so decent work and economic growth. So what was your takeaway from spending that time? And you said you wrote a lot of notes and said in a lot of meetings. So what is your takeaway? Like what can be done in Suriname to really create meaningful growth and meaningful employment for people? Was there any concrete outcome results from all those consultations?
Yes, thank you for that question. What an interesting question. Well, and a loaded one at that. I would say I learned a lot from a lot of those engagements and those conversations that were had. Firstly, just interacting with the international consultant, Dr. Romulo, who's from Brazil. He would essentially talk me through how he would ask his questions to the communities and tell me why in which he asks them this way. And so just from the basis of structuring his conversation and his presentation with them, it helped me understand why these certain questions are so important for the community. Oftentimes I feel as though the community felt that everybody was telling them what was good for them and not necessarily hearing from their end what was good for them. And so they pretty much emphasized how they needed land rights. They needed the government to support them in that and to assign demarcations and to make sure that that is emphasized in paper, because they found that organizations and third parties would come in and they would start entrepreneurial ventures within the community. And later on, they would find that an organization might come in or a company might come in and say, sorry, we own this and we have this. And they didn't have physical papers that would show them that, you know what, this is actually our land. We've been here for many years and generationally, this is what we know belongs to us. And so generally just understanding that they wanted support in terms of government and writing policies that would affirm and confirm that these are actually our land and this is what we need to develop, and we need clean water, we need lights, we need shelter, is just part of the conversations that were had and how we can put them in contact with organizations that can help them with that. I felt as though a lot of the conversations, I took a coursework in the winter, which was a project assessment course where I was in the Philippines assessing small businesses in urban poor communities, where a lot of the time we spent just engaging with the community, understanding what they want before we started criticizing or telling them you should do this or try this, and just understanding that they had a plan themselves and we're just there to try and make sure that we follow that plan. And so coming into Suriname, that was pretty much the same structure that the consultant had. He wanted to hear from them what they felt like where the government was failing and where we could come in and help them. And so, yeah, pretty much they wanted to ensure that we were helping them and supporting them in the issue of land rights and demarcations within the community so that they can ensure their own sustainability in the future and they can be in control of what happens around them.
That's so interesting that as an international organization, you have to come in to basically do the very basics, is listen to to the people out there, right? That it needs
Right.
2023 for the government to have you run around to figure out people need a piece of paper to prove their property rights. That's
Right.
Interesting. Good. Mafatse, over to you. You're also a bit on the finance and advisory side, for some background there, from Africa, of course, then spending time in Indonesia. So how do you reflect on, there's a lot of commotion, a lot of activity on the African continent, with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. So how, when you look at the markets, the open economies in Asia, and then you look at Africa as a continent, how do you see that dynamic developing further in Africa? And are there any learnings that you've seen in countries like Indonesia and Southeast Asia that could apply to the development of more open markets and integrated markets in Africa?
Okay. Thank you for the question, Robin. And I think that was one of the main reasons I actually wanted to be assigned to Indonesia, because I had read up actually on just the support that the UNDP offers, predominantly the innovative finance team, the support they had given to the government, and actually then being able to achieve to actually list blue bonds on one of the Asian stock markets. And essentially, I think just the conversations amongst the team on the work that they've seen from a finance perspective, just on how Indonesians have been able to access markets, because I think that is one of the key issues within the African perspective, is just the access to financial markets. And I think one thing that was very interesting, that essentially, because I went in with the approach of seemingly learning what is done in Asia that can be employed in Africa, but came to actually a standpoint where I learned that there are things done from a finance perspective in Africa that can actually Asia can leverage from Africa. And the first is cooperatives. So previously, when I did work at the DFI, I was offered the opportunity to actually fund alongside one of the cooperative banks in Kenya. And I think, you know, we do have these unregulated, we call them stokvels in South Africa, where it does have a social aspect to it. However, it's individuals coming together to save money for a common cause. And we saw that, well, in Kenya, actually, they had gone on to regulate it. And these cooperative banks actually then owned 60% of the cooperative bank. And I think when we actually had these discussions to say, yes, over and above bonds, what can individuals do to access financial markets with the money that they have? How can they utilize their money actually so that it works for them and they can get interest? And when I actually reiterated the cooperative bank model, it was actually interesting, because also in Indonesia, they do have a certain type of model that is cooperative, but also not as regulated. And because also on a weekly basis, we did have conversations and meeting across different UNDP offices, they actually spoke of cooperatives not only in Kenya, however, in Somalia as well. So I think for me, looking from a Asia perspective, yes, Africa can learn a lot from a financial market perspective, maybe just specifically, I think also regulation is very key, where Africa, we can actually learn from how we can better regulate our markets and make them accessible to majority of the individuals. But I've also come to realize that the rest of the world also can learn a lot from Africa when it does come to financial markets, and also the models that we've also, the models we have based on how we save in our societies. So from stokvels being regulated, that is a way of allowing most individuals and a lot of people that don't have access to markets to actually have access to markets. So I think from that perspective, that was really mind-blowing to have that conversation and see that even from an African perspective, we have things that the world can learn from, in as much as, yes, we have a lot to learn from the world. And I really do think we have a lot to learn financially, especially from Asia, looking at what Indonesia has done with blue bonds.
Yeah, no, and it's very interesting. That's a topic very dear to my heart, the whole question of access to finance and how can you support entrepreneurs, and especially also in Africa with the complete deficiency of or absence of the commercial lending markets, especially for small, medium-sized enterprises, that many countries, people just are extremely creative in coming up with solutions per what you're saying about these cooperative structures, and it works. So thank you for that. So you were very serious in answering my serious question. So we'll take it on a bit of a lighter tone. We have about 15 minutes to go. So if anyone in the audience wants to ask a question, so please put that in the chat, and then we'll make sure to also bring that forward. So Mafatse, we'll stay with you. And so what was the most, how would I say, the biggest surprise or the most unexpected thing that happened or experienced while you were there in Indonesia? During your work, could be at work, could be just living in Jakarta, could be just something that you thought, well, that's something that I did not expect from coming here.
Okay. Well, I think for me, well, I had read up on Indonesia, and I think I always thought Indonesia is a very diverse and beautiful country from the research that I had done. And I mean, when you research Indonesia, it does come up that it's the fourth most populous country. And I thought, I come from Johannesburg, and I've seen traffic, so it should be okay. And to my surprise, yes, I was expecting traffic. However, Jakarta is very populous. So I think because of actually the traffic, I decided, well, instead of actually using Uber, I'm just going to become one of the individuals and use the scooters. To my surprise, I thought the minibus drivers in Johannesburg were more on the extreme side until I was actually on a scooter. So for me, really just the bravery of the scooter drivers, just to get you there in time and to be quick, was something that I think for me was a bit, well, I think I was expecting it, but I thought South Africa, I come from South Africa, so it should be fine. However, I was a bit shocked. And I think from a work perspective, I think to what Lalash has mentioned, individuals that do come from the country know what is really best from a policy perspective. So I worked on one of the projects really where, as you might know or not, Jakarta is not going to be the capital city of Indonesia come August 2024. It's moving to a city close to East Kalimantan because the government of Indonesia has heeded to the call of climate change and also having a sustainable forestry. So I think to that, the innovation of individuals and also the what can I say, wanting to participate in actually policy design for me was impeccable, where you see the individuals in Indonesia are actually keen on getting involved in matters really that impact them. And you could see it from just the discussions during lunch. For me, that was really impeccable. And I think it's something that will stay with me forever.
I can imagine. So Lalash, over to you. I bet no big traffic jams in Paramaribo?
No, none at all, actually. I would say shocking, or what I didn't expect. I would still put it in the conversation of the indigenous and tribal peoples, just how layered it is to help them and how complex that journey will be. Just focusing on even geographically where a lot of these communities are. So most of the population of Suriname are along the coast, and the indigenous and tribal peoples, you can find their communities, some along the coast as well, and most of them in the interior. To get there, you would need a boat, some 2-3 modes of transport. So you would need to take an hour drive, get to a boat, get into the boat, and then take a helicopter or a small plane and get into those interior parts of Suriname. And so I understood how important it was for them to ensure and reduce these inequalities, but I just wasn't expecting to see how hard and difficult it is to constantly have these conversations of, okay, how else can we do this without having to, blow the budget or not really
right,
making sure we don't leave anyone behind. Also, I would say, Suriname is the only sovereign country outside of Europe where Dutch is the official language. And so when I would approach people and I would speak in English, and I stayed speaking English, and I would just continue to converse in that language, I was looked at in a very odd way. And they heard I was from South Africa. I was also very surprised how much they knew of the country. So I went to a village and I started introducing myself. And I would say, I'm from South Africa, and explain that I'm an international student. And for the remainder of the day, the community called me Serafina. So they were like, Sarafina, Sarafina. I was very shocked that they knew and referenced this musical from South Africa, the small country I hadn't known anything about until I actually signed up and applied for this internship, knew so much about my country. So I wasn't expecting to know any of that or actually come across any people that could tell me more about my own country or the history and apartheid times. And so that was very interesting for me and a bit unexpected, I would say.
Okay, all right, that's great. Aidai, what was unexpected for you in Laos?
I think a couple of things. Like first, I would. It is a very beautiful country. I mean, I expected that it is like a tropic, like more like tropical, humid, but I didn't expect that much of like biodiversity, because I had a chance to travel a bit in different like regions of Laos, and I was like indeed fascinated by this biodiversity in terms of like plants, in terms of insects, butterflies. So that was a very nice part. Second, I think I did like several like once during my first day with UNDP, I noticed that unlike other countries, UNDP Laos has like UN office in Laos, because it is one office, like where all UN agencies like sit together. So they have 18 SDGs rather than like 17. So it was a surprising fact for me. So I asked like what, like I got curious why there are 18 SDGs rather than 17, like commonly accepted. So, and I figured out that Laos and like UNDP Laos, the largest project of UNDP Laos is actually working on unexploded ordnance. So country has a lot of remnants from like war remnants, and they are still trying to demine the country. So therefore, because there are like a lot of casualties happening still till like our days. So they are working to demine the country, and this is actually the biggest project of UNDP in Laos. So it is the 18th SDG. And the third fact, I would say also like referring to what Mafatsa said, but not traffic. There are a lot of scooters in Vientiane, but it's connected to the fact that there are some difficulties with public transportation because it's not widely available and there are not so many buses. And that's why like people are trying to find alternatives, and they like most of them, they own either like a car or like scooter. So that's why it was like interesting part, because I have never seen that many like scooter drivers anywhere.
Back to scooters. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Good. So Mina, actually over to you. In the interest of time, maybe in just 2 minutes, what was the unexpected thing for you, with the exception of a lot of scooters on the street?
I mean, there were a lot of scooters as well, but I think the one really fun thing was that from the minute I landed to the minute I actually left the country, it rained constantly in the Philippines. In the matter of the weeks that I was there, I lived through 2 typhoons and I went through 3 umbrellas. So I must say, just living in Manila made me really prepared for this New York weather here
Yes,
this
today,
September.
right? No, I know.
Yeah.
Good. Right.
Yeah.
Typhoons.
So that was one of like the really fun experiences.
That's fair enough. Good. Saujan, what was it for you?
For me, it was the weather. Because I thought like it was the coldest capital in the world, but in the summer is very short and very warm. So I was very ill prepared for that. Like I was just carrying warm clothes with me, and like it was just lightweight. It was no use. And also Mongolia is like dry, but like this year it rained so much, like there were a lot of floodings in Ulaanbaatar. So like this was really unexpected for me.
Okay. Nazipo, you were home, of course, so nothing unexpected for you.
I really was, the homecoming. I was truly taken away by how beautiful the country is. and how the people in the country itself are so adamant about preserving their culture. This is actually known as a formal attire. It is worn to work. It is worn by the government officials to any occasion. One interesting fact also about Eswatini, it is home to the largest rock in Africa called Sibebe, and their local beer is amazing, also named Sibebe.
Okay, all right. We learned, now we know where the biggest rock in Africa is. So, well, thank you. There's one question from the audience. So we have 4 minutes. So I will ask you to answer the question in 2 words only. And the question is really like, what is something, a habit or way of doing of things that you will take away from the country that you were visiting, and what would you then use in your respective country? So, 2-word answer. Nozipo, we'll stay with you.
Okay, sorry about that. 2-word answer. Maybe please just repeat the question for me.
Well, the question is from the audience in 2 words, and answer like, what is it that you experienced, that you learned in the host country, that you think you will take home and apply in your home country?
Definitely that kindness takes you a long way. When you approach people in love and in kindness, they're very receptive and responsive, and that love is our ultimate calling. So whatever you do, you do in love. That was not 1 word or 2 words.
That's I'll count it as 2 words. So Lalash.
Yes, I would say a cheerful spirit and sharing. They are willing to just, do you want a plate? Do you want a plate? I walked across past many families that were sitting at the park, and they all offered me foods. They didn't know me, they didn't even know my name. So I would say just a cheerful spirit and just sharing and just being
cheerful
one
spirit.
with everyone. Mm-hmm.
Like that. Idai.
I would say like the one thing I notice in Lao people that they always carry these bamboo containers, so they're very like sustainable, like in terms of like some small things. So that is what I noticed, and I thought, oh, it's a good thing. Like, so yeah, maybe this.
Okay, Meenakshi.
Work-life balance. You sign in at 9 a.m. and you sign off at 5, and that's it.
Okay, 9 to 5. Look at that.
Yeah.
That's like 7 even in Suriname. I remember that exists. So John.
Just learning to live life. Like Mongolia is like very harsh during the winters, like for 9 months, and during the 3 months, like they really know how to like enjoy life. So just that would be.
Okay, and then Mafatse.
I will definitely say it has to be collaboration. I find that Indonesians really do work together. And the second is really also just kindness. People are kind in Indonesia, and if you do your task in kindness, they're always willing to help. So collaboration and kindness. I
like that. That's a very beautiful closing. Collaboration and kindness. So, well, first of all, thank you all. And I'm very pleased that you had a wonderful and a very insightful experience going abroad. Do stay in touch. And thank you again for making time for this conversation. I'll hand it back over to you, Anne.
Thank you so much. And thank you, panelists, students, Robin. It was really a wonderful experience to hear from you. If you would like to join the audience, if you would like to join our organization and become a member of UNA, it's very simple. You go to our website, UNA-NYC.org, and you can join. We would love to have you. Now, Bennett, yes, we have a race that's coming up that we are going to be meeting in Central Park on October 21st. If you'd like to come in person and do this race or walk, you could also walk, you can bike, you can push a stroller. But it's also very interesting is you can do this virtually and you can do it on your own time. So if anyone's listening out there from different parts of the world, you can do it. You can just sign up and do this wherever you are. And so it would count as you being with us, supporting UNA New York. And we have another program coming up, actually 2. We have our annual fundraising gala coming up on November 8th, which will be at the Metropolitan Club of New York. It's a very fancy event. I'm really working very hard on this to get it off the ground. Our honoree this year is Estee Lauder Companies because they have done a lot for gender equality, and we would like to recognize that. If anyone would like to come to this, it will cost a little money because we can't have it for free, basically, but it is our only fundraiser, and this is the way we make money, our funds to send the scholars, you guys abroad, is through this dinner. So please spread the word for people to buy a ticket or a table. And of course, all the scholars are going to be invited, and you guys are going to be on stage telling everybody all the good things you've done. And then our next program is after that. It's November 17th. We have a film called Goodbye Julia. And that's with our film program about the Sudan. It's a very interesting film. I've seen it and I got very excited about it because, as you know, we don't know too much about what is going on in that part of the world. So if you like to see that, the director will be there. It will be from 2 to 5 p.m. It's a fairly long film, but we will be speaking, we'll have a panel after discussing the Sudan. So thank you all very much for being with us, for joining us, and I hope everyone has a good and wonderful day or evening if you're from somewhere else. Thank you.